Good morning. You jumped, didn't it? You've all been sat there waiting patiently. It's nice to see some new faces too. Some of you I haven't seen before, which is lovely. Are you all well? Just nod. All well, all good. Excellent. Everyone can hear me apparently, so that's always good. Otherwise, I'm just talking to myself, aren't I? Right, we're going to mute everybody just so that if you've got any questions as I'm going through, you can pop them in the chat. And then Andrew will feed it to me in my little earpiece, and then we can answer them as we go along. So I've discovered a few lovely things this week or last week to do with Cadence Paint as well. So I'm going to teach you lots of bits and pieces on that. But I wanted to, first of all, show you how you can take one of the stencil designs and change it and make layered stencils, change the design of the stencil, use different mediums through it, etc., etc. So I thought we'd just kind of get going, really. The USB that has my Stylish Stencil files on it is actually in the computer because for some reason I can't get my machine to talk to the computer today. So for those of you that have got a CM machine that doesn't have Wi-Fi, that isn't Wi-Fi enabled, you will see how to import a file. So I thought, well, it works anyway, so we're good to go. So I'm going to go, this is Canvas Workspace. Now, nobody's ever been in Canvas Workspace before. I was very scared, I think is the only word, about it. And I was like, no, I'm not doing Canvas. I don't like it. I don't want to sit in front of a computer. It's not me. And then I had to go, and now I love it. Miss Cynical here. Miss, I can't do it. Yes, you can do it. So I'm going to take you into Canvas straight away so we can start to manipulate these shapes. Canvas Workspace is free. There are two different versions. There's a web app version, which is the one that I will be using because I prefer to use this one. And I prefer to use the app version, but on my laptop, because when you hover over one of the icons, it comes up and it tells you what it is. So instead of having to memorize everything, it tells you exactly what the button is. So it's much easier to navigate. The downloadable version works on your PC. That's a little bit more like a traditional graphics program where you have all the file and edit and all the little drop-down menus. I prefer, it's just my personal choice. It doesn't matter which one you use. You will get the same results from both, but I just prefer the web app one. So I'm just going to talk you quickly around Canvas Workspace because I see we've got quite a lot of new faces. In fact, I don't think I recognise anybody from my other classes, which is actually really lovely. Not that I don't love them all, but it's nice to have new people, which is fabulous. So, and I have to make a massive apology. Andrew's just reminding me, this class is late. And the reason for that was I was very happily down in Peterborough, ready to go on and do my shows on the Wednesday, then drive back up here to do the class on the Thursday, and then it all changed. That's my life in a heartbeat. And then Andrew was on holiday. So thank you for your patience. We really appreciate it. And we'll try and get it on YouTube for you today as well. So you can watch it back over and over and over again. So if you think, oh, I missed that, what did she say? You can watch it back at any time, which is great. Right, so this is what Canvas Workspace looks like, okay? And all these projects here are all from Brother. And they all come with free cutting files, with a free downloadable PDF with instructions, and also a free video tutorial. And it's always worth just having a look at some of these because they have the cutting files that go with them. So if you're ever stuck and you think, oh, I could just do with a cutting file for a poinsettia, there's your cutting file right there. Okay, and all these are free as well, which is fabulous. So it's worth having a look, like the holly there and the little centre and the poinsettia. And to use them, all you would do would be click on that and press OK, and it will take it onto a mat for you. And then you can download that and cut it out. So it's absolutely well worth looking at that. And I'm just looking at this snowflake here. And this is rather lovely because it has two little cut lines in. So it could be a ribbon slider, maybe on your Christmas cards. So I just wanted to show you that little bit first before we get into the stencils. And my brain, I have to really fight to keep it concentrated on one thing, especially when I'm working in Canvas, because I do something and I think, oh, I could do this, I could do that, it will do this. So I'm going to try really, really hard to keep myself contained today. So the first thing we're going to do is import the file. Now, if you're working on a Wi-Fi enabled machine, you can send the files backwards and forwards once your machine is linked to your Wi-Fi at home. And once you've sent a file, you will find it in My Projects. So if I just click on My Projects and I click on one of the projects that I saved this morning, you can see there that we've got our stencil patterns. If you save something whilst you've got Canvas Workspace open, you will need to refresh My Projects to put the projects in that category. So if you're working on something and you send it to your machine and then you send it back and you think, where is it? You need to refresh. If you're doing it while Canvas is, if you switch Canvas on after you've saved it, it will automatically appear in My Projects. But we're not going to do that at this moment in time. We're going to go to this box at the top that says SVG. And SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphics, and it's one of the file formats that Scan and Cut reads. So I'm going to click on that, and it asks me to choose a file. So as soon as I choose a file, it's going to open up my computer, and I've clicked on the USB drive. So if I just click on that again, it gives me, now yours won't have all this on. These are files that I've saved when I've been designing other stuff, but yours will have Stylish Stencils SVG USB. That's not easy to say. Then you've got your borders, your complete designs, your frames, and your pattern elements. So your borders is an element of a pattern that's been made into a border stencil. The complete design has the central pattern and the outside frame. The frames just has the frame with no central pattern, so you can mix them up. And your pattern elements are the center of the stencil. So we've divided it down into 4 categories, and you've got 25 in each one. So if I just go to complete designs here, they're then all numbered. Now, we did put something on our website, I believe, or we sent you a link that you can download that would give you something like, let me just grab this and go on the overhead, that will give you something like this so that you can see all your patterns and they're all numbered. Okay, so if you haven't had that, we need to sort that out for you. So you can see these are your complete designs. And looking at this just makes me really, really, really super excited, because it means we've got loads and loads and loads of stuff that we can do just with one stencil. We can take part of it, we can manipulate that part, we can make something completely different, which is fabulous. Now, when we design these files, we didn't design them with an outside edge, because if you want to, when I'm cutting a stencil, so if I just bring one in that I've already cut, when I'm designing a stencil, I don't want a specific outline around the outside edge. I'm just going to see if I can make that easy for you to see by putting it over black. There you go. So I don't want an outside edge, because what I want to do, if I want a 7.5 or an 8-inch stencil, is I want enough space around the outside edge to be able to ink or spray or scrape or spread texture paste or whatever it is. And I don't want to have to mess around with, you know, trying to mask off the outside edges so the ink doesn't go over the edge or the paint doesn't go over the edge. We also, when we designed them, we grouped all the detail together. So you can't ungroup it on your machine, but you can by taking it into Canvas Workspace. So we're going to do some of that. Sometimes when you buy SVG files from different places, if they've got an outside edge and the pattern's inside, they will have created it as what they call a compound path. And I know that sounds really technical, but what it means is when you have a file that's got an outside edge and detail in the middle, the Scan and Cut will see it as a square outside and all the little pieces are sat on top of it in a pile. They're all laid out, but they're in a pile. So what a lot of designers will do is change that so that the Scan and Cut sees it the way that we see it. So it sees a square with all the pieces cut out of it. But then you can't ungroup it because it's one piece. So it no longer sees it as a square with all the bits sat on top. It sees it as we see it, as a stencil. So then when you take it into Canvas, it won't ungroup because you can't ungroup one shape. So the way that we do it is we don't do that. We keep it so that when you do take it into Canvas, you can ungroup it. And that means that you get so much more value for money out of your stencils. And you can cut your stencils out of it, depending on what you're going to use on it and how long you want to keep that stencil for. So if it's something that you're going to use a lot with lots of different mediums, then cut it out of something like dough flex or an acetate. If it's something that you might only use once, just cut it out of a piece of card. It depends, it's up to you, whichever you prefer. You can use the Cadence decoupage glue to go over a piece of card on both sides to seal it, so you can then use more wet mediums through it as well. So that's just something to think about. So I'm going to go back into my USB now, and I'm going to click on number 9. So I've chosen the file, it says 09 SVG down here, and then I'm just going to press OK, and that will bring on this design. So if I click on this, you can see it's automatically ungrouped it, because all these pieces are separate, which is fabulous. So if you just wanted the flower in the middle, you could get rid of all the rest and you've just got your flower. And that's the difference. That's why we save our files differently to some other people, because we want you to get the most out of each pattern. And this might not come naturally to you at the beginning, but the more you play in Canvas, the more you will become addicted. And it is addictive, because one day you might think, oh, well, I just want that heart bit and I want to make that into a stencil. You can do that. Or I might just want that corner bit there and I might want to make that into a border. You can do that. That's the exciting bit about it. So the first thing we're going to do is group all these pieces together, which sounds a bit contradictory to what I've just said to you, but there's a reason. So I'm going to drag a box around all of them. And then at the top, I'm going to go to Edit, because we're going to change it. So I'm going to go to Edit, and this box opens up. So you've got Undo, which will become your best friend in Canvas. So even if you go along and you've designed something and you love it, and then you do something wrong and you're like, oh no, you don't have to start again. You can just undo. And then there's a redo button as well. So you've got cut, copy and paste, and then you've got duplicate. Then in group, you've got group, and then you would have ungroup. Any that's greyed out means it's not available, and it's not available because we haven't grouped it yet. So as soon as I group it and go back into Edit, ungroup appears. Hover this is select all. So instead of dragging a box around, you could have gone into Edit and selected all there. The bin, the offset line, which we're going to use in this demonstration. And then you've got your alignment functions and your process overlap at the bottom, and we'll talk about those as we go through the class. So I've grouped it now. So I now have this as one piece. Now what I want to do is take this and create a layering stencil. So this is going to be my first layer. Then I want to create an inward offset line. So if you just make something smaller, all the pieces just scale down, but then it won't line up perfectly over the top of the original. So what we need to do is create an inward offset line. And that means that if we do a 1 millimeter inward offset line, it's 1 millimeter perfectly from every single point on every single one of those shapes. So when you come to line it up to put your ink through or your paste through or whatever you're using your paint through, it will line up perfectly. And that's what we want to achieve. Now on the SDX, when you try and create an inward offset line on this shape, it says it can't do it. So we do it in Canvas Workspace, okay? So we're going to go into Canvas and we're going to do it in here. So we go to Edit now, and we looked at this one before. Now there's two ways you can do this. You can either duplicate this first. So let's duplicate that and move that one over there. Or you can do it in a different way. So I'll show you this way first, then I'll show you the other way after. So we go to Edit, and this is our offset. Now we want to make it smaller. So if you imagine we're putting ink through that stencil, the next layer we want to be so that the next pattern sits on top of the ink that we've just put down, and then the next one needs to sit on top of that. So we're layering our stencils, which is really cool, but we're doing it ourselves, which is fabulous. So we're going to go into Create Offset Line. And in spacing at the top, I'm going to move this card out of the way. There we go. A 1 millimeter says offset direction. I want it to be inward. And I want to delete, so options, selected original line. So this is what do we want to do with the original file? Do we want to leave it where it is? Do we want to delete it? Or do we want to set it as a drawing line? So I'm going to delete it. And then I'm going to press OK. And the reason I'm deleting it is because I've already duplicated it. So now I've created a stencil that will fit inside the original stencil. So I'm going to drag a box around here like this, go back up to Edit and group that together. Okay, so somebody's just asked how we change from inches to millimeters. Sue, thank you for the question, Sue. You go to View at the top and you go down, and at the bottom it says inches and millimeters, and you just click on inches or millimeters, whichever you prefer. So that's how you do that. Super simple. So you're viewing the project and then it gives you units of measurement at the bottom. That's a great question, thank you. Right, for this one, I'm going to do it slightly differently. So I'm not going to duplicate this one so that you can see, and then you can decide which way you find easier. So we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to go to Edit, into Offset Line, and we're going to create another 1 millimeter inward offset line, but this time we're going to leave the original as it is because we didn't duplicate it. So we need to keep the original as well. So I'm going to press OK. And now it's going to work its magic. Now I'm going to click on the, this is the bit where it gets a little bit tricky. You click on the panel that you've just created an inward offset line from, and you move that out of the way. And then you've got your third layer, which is here. Then we drag a box around that. We go to Edit and we group that together. So I've now got my 3 panels. So this one is going to be my first panel. This is going to be my main stencil. That's going to have the lightest colour through it. This one's going to be my second layer. That's going to have the middle colour through it. And this one is going to be the darkest one. So the one with the least amount of space. So I'm going to drag all these over here and I'm going to put them all on one mat like this. So if I do this and then I drag a box around them all, you'll see how this is going to work. So I'm then going to go to Edit and I'm going to align them. You don't need to do this to download them. You just need to make sure that all the parts are on the mat. But I'm just going to show you. So we're going to align them centrally vertically and centrally horizontally. And you can see how those all fit perfectly on top of each other. And I love that. I think that's super, super, super cool. So I'm going to click off them and then I'm going to go to download. So we're going to go to download. Normally, I would send it via Wi-Fi to my machine, so scan and cut transfer. But because I can't get it to talk to it today, there's something a bit dodgy going on with the Wi-Fi outside. I'm going to go download to PC. So I'm going to click on download to PC. And then I'm going to close this down. So I'm going to close that and I'm going to minimize that. So now when I go into this PC and I go into downloads, the file that I've just done is right there. And I can I can right click that and send it to my USB. So we right click, send to USB, click again. Okay, so just to show you that again, it tells me that it's downloaded today. So it tells me it does export it as an FCM file. Excuse me. Now, an FCM file is the file format that the scan and cut. It's brother's file format, basically. Sorry, I'm just going to have a little drink because I've got a tickle. This isn't good because I've got 5 hours of teaching today. So this isn't good that I'm losing my voice already. So I'm done now, I'm sorted. Right. So it will say FCM. I just wanted to tell you that because it might throw you. You might think, why is it not an SVG file? So to transfer it to your USB, you right click it, you send to, and then you choose where you want it to be sent to, which is the USB drive. Okay, and then you click on that and it will be on the USB. I'm so sorry, I don't know where this tickle's come from. Andrew, sorry, can you just message someone to bring me a vocal zone in, please? Thank you. We have these little sweets that we put on the side of your mouth and it helps with your throat. So If I now go to my USB drive, right click it and eject it, that means it's ejecting it safely. I'm being really good and showing you what to do. Normally I just pull it out, which is very naughty, but now it's safe. I'm going to take it out and I'm going to pop it back into my scan and cut. Now it doesn't matter which model you've got, it will work on all of them. And that just shows you that it doesn't matter whether you've got the SDX 1200 or whether you're working on a CM machine, it makes no difference. Everybody can do this. And that is really, really important to me because I've sold this machine for so long. Well, it'll be 8 years in January, I can't believe that. That I'm very aware that there are tens of thousands of you that have CM machines and there's no way we're leaving you behind. So we'll always make sure that everything works with every machine because that's important. Right, so now we've got our USB in our machine. So to access that USB, we're going to, let me just see if I can find my stylus because I have a feeling I've left that outside somewhere, but it's all right. Oh no, I've got one. Right, so to retrieve the data from the USB, you're going to go to Retrieve Data, click on the image that looks like a USB, and go into, you're going to scroll down until you find the file. So let's see where that file is. I want to say it's that one there. No, it's not. Let me find the one. There it is. There it is. Right. So I've now got my 3 layers. So I'm going to press OK. And you're now going to cut each one of those out of Mylar, Doflex card, whatever it is you choose, you decide you want to do. Okay. So the best way to cut them out is you need to make sure that your mat is really nice and sticky. So I've got a newish mat. However, if you haven't got a new mat, get some stencil glue from Pinflair and retack your mat. And Andrew, there's a video, isn't there, that we've done about retacking your mat? Is it on our YouTube channel? Yeah. So have a look. Andrew will put it up for you today because it's important. And the reason it's important is when you're using something like a scan and cut and you've got a moving platform and a moving blade, when you put card on your mat, it holds it in place because it's got something to grip to. But what we're asking it to do is cut plastic, and plastic doesn't have any fibres in it. So what that means is that it can slide. So if your mat isn't sticky enough, it can't grab. There's almost like no key to it. It's shiny. It's very smooth. So we need to make sure that our mat is really, really, really nicely sticky so that it holds the plastic in place as we cut it. All right. Then all you're going to do is put your acetate on your mat. You're going to ask it to cut with the auto blade and it will go round and it will cut it out. Now, let me just bring on that file for you again because I want you to just see what I mean by that. So let's get rid of that. I don't want that one. And let's get rid of that one and leave us with the main one. So we've now got this. Okay, so we're now going to cut that out of a plastic. Now, when you come to press cut on here, it gives you options. So please select and cut. This is only on the SDX machines, by the way. If you go into your little spanner here, you can put your cut pressure on auto. And what it does is it goes along and it reads the depth of the material and it will cut it as many times as it needs to. And the amount of times that it needs to comes from this little button here, which says cut amount. So this is like the blade depth, if you like. So how far down that blade is going to be pushed. Now they've added new increments in recently. So you've got 0.1 millimeters, which is super fine. Then you've got 0.3 millimeters. Then you've got 0.5, you've got 1 millimeter, and you've got 3 millimeters. So the 3 millimeters is when you're cutting something like a thick felt or a thick foam. It's not for grey board or anything like that. That would be too hard a cut. It would be too strong a cut. So what I'm going to do for this one is use 0.5 millimeters. Now, as good as the auto blade is, and as good as it is as reading the thickness of a material, it doesn't read the density. So when I'm cutting something like acetate, and this is quite a thin acetate, so acetate or Mylar, I like to put it on 0.5 and I like to up my cut pressure to 1 because I want it to cut in one pass. You can do it cutting it 2 or 3 times. if your mat is super sticky. But if it's not sticky enough and this moves, when it comes to do its second coat, it might not be in exactly the same place. So I would rather get through in one go. And the way that I do that is having 0.5 millimeters and I'm putting the cut pressure on 1. And I find that most Mylar, thin vellum, thin acetate will cut through this. The thicker the Mylar, the more cuts it will need to do. And the machine might think it's cut through it, because if it reads it as 0.5 millimeter and you've cut it once at 0.5, it will think it's done. But because you're cutting through something dense, you might need to send it around a couple of more times. But it means we can make our own stencils, so we don't worry about that. Right, so once you've cut them, you will end up with, let me just see if I can find all my bits and pieces, because I did this morning. So we've got all 3 of our layers somewhere, bear with. There's me thinking I'm all organised. Turns out I'm not that organised. Let's have a look. Right, so we've now got our 3 layers. So we've got our original one. Let's bring this black card back in. That's your original one. Okay. This is your middle one. Like that. So you can see how it's smaller. I'll bring this one back in and show you. You see how that fits perfectly over the top of there. So now we're making our own layering stencils. And on the old Create and Craft, I once did stencils like this, and we did it with texture paste, but we did florals. And I'm going to try and bring it back to the channel, actually. So we had a big peony head, and I pasted through with the first stencil, and literally lifted the stencil off vertically so that it kind of held the paste in place. Let it dry completely. Put the first stencil back on, and then the second stencil over the top, and paste it again. And then let that dry. And then put the first 2 back on and the third one on top and paste it again. And you ended up with this really 3-dimensional flower head. It was fabulous. But for you know, inking through, things like that, this is a great way of making your own stencils. And then our third layer will go underneath that like that. So you've got your 3 layers. So when you're working with layered stencils, you're going to work with the most open one first, because if we're going to use 3 colours, like a mid, a light and a dark, of the set of a pink or a blue or a green or a purple, we want to do the lightest colour first. Okay, so I've already gone ahead, because there's other things that I want to show you as well, and done the first layer of the stencil. So if I bring in that stencil now and position this over here, done it like that. So I'll show you how I've stuck it down as well in a minute. So I've done that. I've taken a blending brush, and the 3 pinks that I'm using are all Distress Oxides: Spun Sugar, Kitsch Flamingo and Picked Raspberry. So they're all quite a cool pink, and they all work together when they're layered up. So that's the first one. So I just used a blending brush and went through that. Now I'm going to put in my second layer. Now on this one, I faded out the edges because I didn't want it to be super sharp. I wanted to show you something a little bit different. So now I'm going to bring in this stencil. Now, the best thing to put your stencils down with is this product. And it's stencil spray from Cadence. It is brilliant. It is super, super fine. It's not like a spray adhesive, as in like a spray mount, so a permanent or repositionable one. A lot of them can go really quite stringy. And when you're stenciling, the last thing you want is all those strings going across the open areas of your stencil. So this is fabulous. It's super, super quality, as you would expect from Cadence. And you need the smallest amount on the back of your stencil. You stick it down, doesn't leave any residue, doesn't tear your card, and it's also brilliant for printing rice paper. So you would put a little bit of this on a piece of copier paper, put your rice paper on top, feed it through your printer, and then you separate the 2 and there's no residue whatsoever. It is a fabulous product. Right, I've got another question. So can we resize the layers before the stencil before we create the layers? Or do we create them all first and then resize them? That's another really good question. It doesn't really matter. I would either make it smaller and then do the layers, or if we just go back to Canvas Workspace, I aligned all 3 sets on top of themselves, didn't I? So you could see the image. I'm just going to get Andrew to go back to the PC. There you go, like that. So if I now drag a box around all those 3 and go to Edit and Group it, I can then, I've got 2 options. So I can either drag it like that or drag it like that to make it bigger or smaller. And this is in really precise amounts. So you've got all sorts of different sizes. The only thing you need to remember is that the Scan and Cut needs 3 millimeters to be able to turn, meet itself and come out. But the really clever thing about this is when you download it, if there's any pieces that it knows it can't cut, it will eliminate them. And they're so tiny that you won't even know that they've gone. So it's not like it suddenly takes a chunk of your stencil away. It's super specific. And then if I go into show properties, you can actually do it really precisely. So this is 251.5 millimeters. So you can go super detailed with it as well. So either way, it doesn't matter, whichever suits you. I would probably do it this way. So I've got all 3 layers, and I know that I'm taking them down. And then all you do is go to Edit and Ungroup and then move it. If you ever find after you've been working with a file for a while that it won't let you ungroup it anymore, because sometimes it gets to so many places and then it goes, no, I'm not doing that anymore. It throws a little bit of a wobbler. Send it to your machine, recall it and send it straight back into Canvas, and then it will see it as a shape again and it will allow you to ungroup it. So whichever way suits you, it doesn't really matter which way you do it. Right, so I've gone through that one. So what I'm going to do now is bring in my second layer, which is this one. And I'm going to position this over the top. I've already got my stencil spray on the back, so I'm already happy with that. And I'm just working my way around and just having a look to make sure that each layer is fitting perfectly inside like that. Right, so I've now got this layer. So let me show you how I've done it with ink. So I've got a blending brush. Now I love these blending brushes. We don't sell them at Highlight Crafts, but they are widely available. You don't need to spend a fortune on them because you can wash them and reuse them. I think these were 10 for $9.99 on Amazon, I think. They weren't expensive, and they've got this really flexible head to them. So you can put as little or as much pressure on as you want. And I have a little bit of an obsession with blending brushes, just to show you. That's one bag. And this is the other bag. A little bit of an obsession, I think, going on there. Bit like that. Right, so I'm now going to go in with my next layer of colour. So this is my middle colour. So my Spun Sugar was my palest one. And this is now my middle colour. Okay, so we're going to go through here. And just take your time. Stephanie and I did a retreat at the weekend, and we were doing a little bit of stenciling, making some Christmas cards with the Quirky Bird Enchanted Elf. And one lady was like this, trying to get a lot of colour on. I'm like, you're not scrubbing the floor, just nice and gently, okay? We don't want to get blotches, and we don't want to get a dark area in one place and going lighter in another. We kind of want it quite even, unless you're going for that really shaded, blended look. So all I'm doing now is just very gently round the edges. Once I've got that colour down in the middle, I'm very gently now, when I come to the edges, just fading it out. So I'm taking the pressure off the brush. I'm allowing the residual ink that's on the brush to just create a really soft edge to this. And then come back in the middle. And you can see it doesn't matter where I come in, that ink is just going to blend, which is lovely. If you're a little bit wary of that, start on the side of your stencil and bring the ink in slowly, okay? So Julie's asking how we get the border. So what I've done is I've just taken the file and I've positioned it on my Scan and Cut mat in the middle. And then I've cut it out of a piece of 12 by 12 acetate. So I haven't got a square around the outside edge because I don't want to have to mask it all off to stop the ink going everywhere or the spritzer going everywhere. So I've just cut it into the Mylar, okay? Does that make sense? If it doesn't, tell me, and then we'll think of a different way of explaining it. You can, if you want to use this as a cutting file, I'll show you. Andrew, you need to remind me because I'll have forgotten by the time I finish inking this. But I'll show you how you put a square around it, how you do that. Right, so I've now got my second layer. And what I love about stenciling is it doesn't look great until you do the reveal, and then it's like a bit of a wow. And I wasn't really a big stencil user until we went to Cadence and did their training, and then I was like, oh, this is magic. Look how soft and delicate that looks. And it could just be a little bit that comes through a project. It doesn't have to be the whole thing. So now what we do is we go back in with our third layer. And I'm just going to add a little bit more stencil spray on the back of here so that you can also see how little I use. So hold it a little bit away from you. You're better doing it outside because it does have an aroma with it. And that's it. That's all you need. So to stencil onto fabric, you can still use this stencil spray. If you want a firmer hold, you could use the stencil glue that you use to retack your mats. But to be honest, this stencil spray is good enough on fabric. They also do a stencil cleaner, which is good. It helps you get that sticky residue off. But to be honest, I very rarely clean my stencils unless I need there's another colour coming in. And then we're going to picked raspberry, which is our last pink. So I'm going to pick up my other brush. And these wash really easily. So I washed most of mine the other day for the retreat and just under warm water. I didn't even bother using any detergent or anything. And now we're going to go in. And I do like to use circular motions. It's like when I'm colouring with alcohol markers, like ink lily pens, which we're about to introduce you to very shortly, which is very exciting. So for those of you that have never seen ink lily before, that's something for you to look out for. I want to say it's going to be on the 20th, I think, but you never know in the world of TV. It can change in a heartbeat. Right, so now I'm just going round here and I'm just going to stop. I'm not going to go right to the edges with that. Okay. So somebody's asked, are we getting the new rotary cutting blade and the mat? I need to do a little bit of work with that rotary blade because I've tried it and it didn't work for me. So I need to have a proper play. And then if I think it's good enough, then yes, we will. I have to say though, the fabric blade that comes with the STX 1200 is phenomenal. I mean, it is such a good blade for fabric. But yeah, I understand why you might want the rotary one, but I couldn't get it to work. Brother are telling me that it's fabulous and they've got it to work, but I couldn't get it to work. And for me, a rotary blade needs to be sharp and their blade wasn't sharp. And you also have to be able to put a lot of pressure on and almost go into a thick, dense mat. Whereas the mat isn't thick or dense, it's the same as the other mat. So let me do a little bit more research on it and then I'll let you know. We'll put a post on our Facebook page and let you know what I think about it because I wasn't very impressed at the beginning. And this is what I do. I'll just tell you the way it is. You know, if something's brilliant. If it's not, I'll be like, yeah, don't bother. It's like the vinyl blade. The vinyl blade is great and it needs a housing to go with it, but you can use the CM blade and housing. So if you've upgraded your scan and cut, just use your original blade and it's cheaper. Okay. Which download is this? So the download is going to be available. Tell me again, Andrew, if I've already forgotten. When we email out the video link. Right, and it'll also be in the description of the YouTube video, so that's good. Right, I'm going to go back to Canvas briefly. So I'm going to get rid of these two because I don't need this. Now, if you want to save this, which you probably will, if you go to Project at the top and you go to plus, says save as another project, tells you what it is. It's easy. Click on that and it will come up and tell me that my project's saved. And now I go into my projects and it will be there. So this one I'm going to get rid of, and this one I'm going to get rid of, and this one now I'm going to show you how to put a square around it. So it now sees this as lots of shapes, and that's why it's cut it into my acetate. To add an outside edge, I'm going to go into basic and I'm going to go into the square, and I'm going to drag this square out like that, and then I'm going to position that over the edge. So if you wanted this to be a cutting file, that's what you would do. You would create your outside edge and you're in charge of how big that is. Now, because I've put a square there, it now sees the square with all these pieces sat on top of it. And we need to see it as the way that we see it, as a square with all the pieces cut out of it. So to do that, first thing I'm going to do is align it. So I'm going to drag a box around both pieces, go to edit and align it centrally vertically, go to edit and align it centrally horizontally. And then I'm going to group it. So now that's going to cut out of your piece of card. If I wanted to then make that a card front and weld that to another square, right now it won't allow me to do it. And it won't allow me to do it because it's seeing it as a square with other pieces sat on top. And when you're welding, it's like digitally gluing. Everything has to be overlapped. So we need to make it see this as one shape, the way that we see it. So we are now creating that compound path, okay? So to do that, it's super simple. You go to edit, and at the bottom, there's a whole section called process overlap. That's weld. The second one in is what we call divide. And divide in my head is a big digital punch that comes down and it punches all those pieces out of that square. And then you're left with what we see as the stencil. So if I divide it, you get this blue line going across the top here. That's perfectly normal. As soon as that stops, it means it's done what it needs to do. So I can now move that square, and all these pieces are the bits that it's punched through. That's what makes sense in my head. So you've now got all those bits that have been punched through, and you can pop those in the bin. And now you've got this piece, which if we go back to edit, it won't allow me to ungroup it because it's one shape now. So if you wanted to use that as a cutting file, you can absolutely do that. Now I'm just going to bring in a card just to show you how effective it looks as a cutting file. Look at that. So that's now got 3 layers. So the black layer is the dark pink one. The white layer is the medium pink. And the other black layer is the original stencil. And you build it up and you use it as a cutting file. And then all I've done on behind here is I've got a piece of UPO, which is a plastic substrate. And I've dropped alcohol ink on it and just put it behind. And for a quick, simple, but really different, effective card, that's a great way of using those cutting files, because they are cutting files. Just because it's a stencil, it's still a cutting file. You can still draw it. So if you're into your Zentangle, you could draw the design out and then colour in all the detail and do your little doodling inside of it. You could do it onto parchment if you've got the embossing starter kit. So it would do all the white work for you, and then you could go in and add colour and do the embossing and stretch that parchment. So there's so many different things that you can do when we bring you files on a USB, and that's what I love about it. I could lock myself away for a whole year with this, and I could still come up with new things, which is super exciting. Right, so this is done like putting full pressure on my brushes right the way across. And then the one that we've just done is fading it out slightly, and even those two look different and will give you a different finish, which is fabulous. So that's using the pattern as it is on the USB. However, what I'm going to do is put that in the bin, and I'm just going to go back and I'm going to do what we did before and import the file again, because I want you to just to reiterate how you do that. So SVG, now it says choose file, but 09 is already there. So I'm just going to use that. because you can watch it back. Oh, failed to collect to the server. Of course it did. Oh, that's because the USB isn't in the computer. You know, when I say I don't do technology, I really don't do technology. I am really properly rubbish about that. Right, so let's try again. Let's go to choose file. Let's go back in and do it this way. So number 9 and press OK. And there is my pattern. Right, so all I want this time is that and that little heart there. That's all I want to get from this stencil. So I'm going to start at the top and I'm going to drag a box around like this. And I'm going to get rid of all that bit by putting that in the bin. Then I'm going to drag up from the bottom. So right up from the bottom like that and put all that in the bin. Now, if this had been saved as a compound path, you wouldn't be able to do this because you can't ungroup a single shape because there's nothing to ungroup. And this has come from lots of time working with graphic designers and then going, well, we can just do it as a compound path. And I'm like, well, I don't want it as a compound path because I want to get more out of it. So it's years of understanding how the machine works, learning what the machine needs and how we make it see what we want it to see. And now all the information is passed on to you because I've sorted it all out, which is great, but I've loved it. I have to say I have loved sorting it out. So I'm now left with just this fabulous little shape. Okay, so I'm going to download this and we'll do the same thing again. So we'll send it to our downloads. So once this appears, we know that it's there. And then I'm going to close that and I'm going to minimize my Canvas workspace. So I'm going to go back into this PC, back into my downloads, and there is my latest file. So right click, send to, and to the USB. And now it's on that USB. Now I've already done that earlier on, so we can jump straight to the machine for you, because this is where we're going to make our own design by using part of one of the stencils that was on the USB. This is when it starts to get really exciting, because now it can be bespoke to you, which is fabulous. So on the machine, I am going to stick the USB back in there. And no, I didn't eject it, which is really naughty, but it's what I do. So I'm going to retrieve data from the USB. And there is that little shape that we've just popped on, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is group these pieces together because they're ungrouped. So they were ungrouped and they've downloaded as separate pieces. So to edit, we're going to group these together. So we multiple select, so the 3 red squares, everything that's on the map because we want all the pieces. We press OK and we go to Object Edit and we group it together. So now I've got that shape, but it's not vertical and I need it to be vertical. So I'm going to rotate it and I'm going to go 10, 20 degrees and that gives me a vertical shape. Now don't worry, you don't have to remember all this because we're going to send you the link to this class, don't remember. So that's better. So I'm going to press OK, but now I want to make it slightly narrower because I want it to be really precise. And I want to be able to get 6 lots all the way around to create a circle stencil because this is where we're heading now. So I'm going to go into my resize. I'm going to separate the height and the width by clicking on Unlock Aspect Ratio. And I'm going to take that down to 1 1/4 inches. And you will notice that the height isn't changing because I've separated the height and the width, which gives me a more precise finish, which is great. So I've now got that and I'm happy with that shape. I want 2 of those now. So I'm going to go into here and I'm going to ask it to do 2 and I'm going to press OK. And I'm going to rotate one of them so it's upside down. So I'm going to go rotate 90, 100 degrees, 180 degrees. And now what I want to do is align both of those so they're directly on top of each other. So I'm going to do the same thing again. Multiple select everything that's on the mat and press OK. Go to your directional arrow buttons. And at the top, you've got this button, which is your alignment function. So we're going to align centrally vertically, centrally horizontally, and press OK and tap the screen to release the shapes. And now I should be able to move just that top one down. And depending on, I kind of put a decent gap in between because I know that I want to put another stencil in the middle. But if you wanted to just do, just do it as a smaller area or closer together, this is the bit that you have to work out. And it depends on the size and the width of the shape that you're using. And you'll see that as I go through this next bit. So the first thing I want to do is group those two together. So we do the same thing again. The thing about Scan and Cut, it is really, really, really repetitive. And that's a great thing because the more you do something, the more second nature it becomes. So multiple select, everything on the mat, press OK. We go to Object Edit and we're going to group it. So the next thing I do then is duplicate that. So I'm going to ask it to do 2. And I'm going to press OK. And I'm going to align those. So it's the same thing again. So we multiple select, everything on the mat. We press OK. We go to our directional arrow buttons because we're going to move things. And our alignment function. And we align them centrally vertically and centrally horizontally. We press OK and we tap the screen to release the shapes. So the next thing I do is work out how many degrees I need to rotate it so that the top layer is separate to the bottom layer. So if I rotate this now by 30 degrees, 10, 20, 30, and I zoom in for you, you will see that there is a nice gap in between those two shapes. So I'm happy with that because I don't want them overlapping because then it won't cut into the stencil material. So now I've done that, I undo it. And whatever increment of rotation it is, it needs to divide into 180 because 180 is half of a full circle. And that's what we're going to create. We're going to use the two shapes to create a full circle, but we're only moving it halfway around. You'll see what I mean in a minute. It's quite difficult to explain. So I've got 2 here already, one that's underneath and one that's selected. So when I go to Object Edit and in here, the one that is already selected is here, and I want 4 more. So in total, I want 5 because I've already got one that's underneath that first set. So I've now got 6 sets basically. So I'm going to multiple select everything that's on the mat and press OK. And I'm going to align these. So same thing again, alignment function, align it centrally vertically, centrally horizontally, press OK and tap the screen. So now I'm going to do all my rotations. So I'm going to go to Object Edit and rotate. And we're going to go 10, 20, 30. Then press OK twice. Use these arrows, which are your select arrows, it says it at the top, to get to that next set of vertical shapes. And this time I'm going to rotate that 60 degrees. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Andrew's just said to me, can you do this in Canvas? Now, something weird happens in Canvas when you try and do this, and it works perfectly until you come to group it, and then it puts them all back in a vertical line again. And I don't know why. So this is why I'm showing you doing it on the machine. So I do as little as I need to in Canvas and then send it back to the machine because I'm used to using this. It's a simple process. And I don't know why it does it. I've asked Brother and I'm still waiting for a reply. But for some reason, when you try and group it, it just puts them all straight again and it's really frustrating. So I do it this way. And I always do this. I always use these arrows just to make sure that I know that I'm doing it right. So 90 degrees this time, and then straight to my next set, back into rotate. This time we want 120. So we want 90, 100, 10, 20. Now it shows you at the top the degrees that you've rotated it in, so you never get lost, which is really good for me. And then I'm going to use my arrows again, and this time we're going to go 30 degrees anti-clockwise. So we're going to go to Object Edit and rotate and do 30 degrees in the opposite direction. Now, when you're going anti-clockwise, it subtracts the degrees from 360. So just be aware of that. And now you've got your full design. So now we need to group that together. So we're going to multiple select everything that's on the mat, press OK, go back to Object Edit and group it together. So now I've now created a new stencil out of that original stencil. And that's just using part of it. Then you could go back in and use a different part and a different part, a different part. And it just keeps giving and giving. That's why I love it. And it's super simple to navigate around. So what if we wanted another one inside there? So we go to our duplicate button, we ask it to do 2, and we press OK. And then we make the center one smaller. So we shrink that one right down like that. And then I'm going to rotate that slightly because I want the point. If I just zoom in, I can show you a little bit better. I want, let's have a look, let's get to where I want it to be. I want this point here to be in the middle of those two there. So I'm going to rotate it. So I'm going to rotate it by 15 degrees because that's half of 30. So that should work. So first thing I'm going to do is align it. So we're going to multiple select everything on the mat. And we're going to align it centrally vertically and centrally horizontally. I'm going to press OK. And now I'm going to do my rotate. So I'm going to go to tap the screen to release the shapes, go to rotate and do 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And I might just do one more for good luck. And then I'm going to make it a little bit smaller still. So I'm going to take it down a little bit smaller. So now, if I zoom in, this is when it gets super exciting. And you will lose weeks and months of your life because it is just fabulous. And now you can see I've got a stencil within a stencil. So what does that look like? Well, when you cut that out, it looks like this. I'm going to get a piece of black card. I'm trying to pick up a piece of black. This is black. This is 360 or 50 GSM. This is proper wobbly board. It's amazing. Wobbly board. You know, it's like that, isn't it? We have 2 codes for you in this class. So you know that we always give you a code to shop on our website later on if you want to. Well, I've managed to wangle 2 because I can. So the first one is stencil 15. So capital letters, stencil, and then numbers 15. That will give you 15% discount off all Brother on our website. That includes the SDX 1200 on the highlightcrafts.com website. So mats, blades, accessories, all of the above till midnight on Sunday. So if say you put a mat and a blade in your basket, you go to checkout, you type that code in and you apply it, and then it will take the 15% off. Then we've got a second code for you on Craft Master products. So your glitters, your tools, your fine liners, and this black cardstock. So that's fabulous. So you'll be able to get that 15% off. So you pop that in your basket, then you type in your other code, which is CM, so capital C, capital M for mother, 15 MEL. And that will give you 15% off your whole basket, which is super cool. So anything Craftmaster, anything Brother, 15% off till midnight Sunday. Fantastic. Right, so what I'm going to do now is put some paint through this. So Cadence paint. So let me talk to you about Cadence. I don't even know where to begin with this brand. It is phenomenal. These guys are like alchemists. The things that they come up with are sensational. It's the best paint that I've ever used. It's the best paint that Stephanie's ever used, which says a massive amount because she's switched from the brand that she used to use for her one stroke to Cadence because it's fabulous. And a little funny story of my granddaughter. So my little granddaughter Alice is 7, and the creativity is in her. You can see it. She gets colour. She can see pictures. Bless her. I can't. She just gets it. And I bought her some little ceramic characters to colour in, to paint in. And I put some paint on a mat and she went, I don't like that paint, it's too runny. Can I not have that paint over there? I pointed to the Cadence. So even at 7, she can tell the difference. Now I've just put 3 metallics down here. These are a hybrid metallic, so they will go on any surface and be permanent, and they have the best sparkle. They are amazing. So I've used pearl, I've used silver, and I've used gold. So I've got 3, and I'm going to pick these up on a stencil brush. We also do a really good brush cleaner, which if you're following Stephanie's painting pages, you will probably have seen. And I'm just going to pick a little bit of this up, and I'm working on this nice black board. So I'm just going to go in now, and I'm going to stipple this. In fact, I might just swirl it. Now, without the stencil spray, this might go underneath. And these bits are super, super, super fine. Okay, so we've gone smaller. So the lines are thinner. So just be aware of that. I've taken that size down too. Let me tell you how small I went. 4 inches, more or less. So you can go from more or less, well, 11.5 by 11.5, I would say, down to, looking at this, I would probably say about 3 inches. So card making, gift wrapping, all those different things you can use with your stencils. And how lovely would it be if you did this as your Christmas card, because this looks really special when you've done it, and then you did your wrapping paper to match with the same stencil, but you used ink or paint on that. And then, you know, you did your gift tag to match, and how fabulous would that be? You could even do, you know, if you're the one that cooks Christmas dinner for the family, you could even do all your table settings to match as well. And I love stencils. And I never thought I'd say that because it wasn't in my repertoire, if you like, until we went to Cadence and I discovered this paint, and it's just absolutely phenomenal. And I am going to show you something else that I discovered last week with it, which just blew my socks off. So I'm going to show you that as well. And also I'd like to invite you to join me on a Facebook Live tonight at 5 o'clock. We are launching the new web exclusives from Two Red Robins. It's called In the Moonlight, and I've got some really nice different techniques, and it gives Two Red Robins a different look and feel. So it's not making the big 3D cards and the freestanding cards that you're used to seeing, although you can absolutely do that with it, but it's using more techniques like this. So I think if you enjoy the stencils, you would probably enjoy that Facebook Live, and it's super exciting because I've come up with all new stuff that we can do with the artwork, which is lovely. So I'm just working my way around now, and I'm pushing it into this card. Now, when you're using a wet medium, you want to make sure that you are working on a good quality board. So this black card is fabulous. I don't know how long we're going to have it for. It was kind of, we deal with a mill, and we buy some like kind of end of lines, or sometimes, and it depends. I don't know whether this is an end of line, but I will get it while you can because it's fabulous. It also die cuts really well. I know it's a heavy weight, but I managed to get a Tattered Lace Sentiment die through it the other day. So that worked with some cut tidy. And now I'm just going back in and I'm just blending that gold into that silver. And this is why I love stencils, because that looks like a right royal mess. But when you take it off, look how fabulous that looks. This is why I love that pen. Look at that. And you've designed that stencil from a small part of one of the others, one of the 100 that you got on that USB. And the sparkle on the shine, when this dries, let me see if I can find the one that I've already done for you, is fabulous. Where have I put that one? I don't know. No, can't find it. So we'll wait for this one to dry, but it becomes this, it looks like crushed metal flake. It is beautiful. So they do hybrid acrylics, which is like this, but then they also do hybrid metallics. So check those out on the website as well. But something else I discovered, and this is what I was really excited about, is if you put, so I've got a little spritzer bottle here, and this was, so Stephanie tonight on Create and Craft has got a one-day special with Vintage Ink, which is our stamp brand. And she's bringing you a range called Love Letters. And she's teaching you how to use the acrylic paint that she uses in her painting pages, but to do watercolours with, which is super exciting because it gives you another reason to buy the product, because she always says you need at least 3 reasons to buy. Well, this is another reason. So I got my head thinking last week and thought, well, what if I put some of the gold metallic paint into the bottom of a little spritzer bottle, and instead of adding water, which will dilute the pigment and make it less vibrant, what if I put the extender in, which means that it keeps the paint open for longer? And I gave it a good shake. Would it spritz? Because then all the Cadence paints become spritzers. So instead of going out and buying spritzers that match the paint or match the ink pad, you can make your own. So now we're taking one product and we're doing more with it. So let's see what this looks like. So I'm going to use this again. Is this other piece? In fact, I'm going to grab myself another piece because I can, because I stocked up on this myself last week, which is lovely. And then I'm going to bring this stencil back in and position that there. And there should be enough stencils paste on there, which there is, to keep that down. And then I'm going to spray this. Now, I'm just going to test it in a bin first before I go over the table. Yeah, nice fine mist. And then we're just going to spritz through this. So move your spray bottle as you're going along, and you can get either a complete look or you can go quite patchy, whichever you prefer, whatever your style is. But when I lift this off, look at that. Look at that. Look how beautiful that is. Now, as that dries, you will get a sparkle on that. So now your paint, you can now spritz. How fabulous is that? Because if it was a different product, it would be, right, you need to buy the paint to paint with, then you need to buy the spritz that goes with it, then we might do an ink pad to go with that, and you're buying 3 or 4 products. Whereas with this, you're buying the extender and you're buying the paint, but you can do all these different things with it. So then I got to thinking, what else can I do with it? So I'm going to show you this as well, because this is super cool. Let me just grab a piece of white card now and fold this in half so we've got a smaller area like this. So a regular hybrid acrylic, because you might want to use this instead of blending inks, because I made it blend too. So I'm going to put a little bit of the paint, and this paint is so vibrant. I mean, look at you can see how that it just holds itself. It almost it stays in a dome. It doesn't just loosely spread. It's super, super fabulous. And now I'm going to add some extender onto that. And you can see already how it starts to pull the colour out. So I'm going to give this a mix with a paintbrush. And you want to mix really well. You need the tiniest amount. So if you're going to do a lot of batch kind of blending, probably, the tiniest amount will work. You don't need a lot of it on there. But now I'm going to pick up a blending brush, which we wouldn't normally associate with, I'm going to have paint everywhere. I'm going to go absolutely crazy at me if they walked in here now, because I've got hybrid acrylic all over the desk, but it will come off. So I'm going to pick it up on my blending brush like this. And you can see, because it's got that extender in it, look how loose and soft I can make that go. And then I'm going to start to blend around the edge of my card. Now, you saw me before blend through that stencil, and I had to go back into my ink several times and keep picking up more. Look at this, right the way down, an A4 piece of card. And look how fabulous that blend is. And you can keep working that ink now, or that paint rather. Now, it doesn't stay wet for as long as an ink would, so you need to work not quickly. And actually, if you think, oh no, I need it a bit looser, just put some extender onto your brush or onto your mat, and then look at this. How fabulous is that? So you could buy a pink and a white paint and a bottle of extender, and it will last you for a long time. And you could have as many shades of pink as you want, rather than buying 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ink pads to get that light, mid and dark tone. How fabulous is that? And look, I can keep blending it. And I've used the tiniest amount there. And I've still got all this left, which is just phenomenal. And then if I dip it in here and do that, let's see if I can get that to splat. Maybe not. I can get it on my paintbrush though, look. I can get it on here and then I can get that to splat as well. So spraying with it, stenciling with it, inking or blending with it, so many different ways of using the product that you would buy, you know, as a stamper, as somebody that was doing the painting pages. So all you need to do is get yourself some little empty spray bottles, and you can get those really inexpensively. Just get a decent quality one. Don't get like 100 for 20p because they're not very good. But get yourself a decent one and look at all the different techniques that you can do with that. I think that's fabulous. So in this class, we've shown you, how to create your layering stencils, how to take a part of a stencil to create a completely new one. I'm just going to bring back in this because it will have dried now, so you can see the metallic sheen on it. I mean, it's just lovely. See that for me, if I cut that down now and just had Season's Greetings across the middle, maybe embossed in gold and silver on a piece of black card, just there, that's my Christmas card done. I think that is absolutely fabulous. And you've created that. That's just a smaller version of this. And you've done that from 4 parts of one of the stencils. So really have a play. And you know what? If you don't get it first time in Canvas, if you think, oh, what did she say? I can't remember. Watch the class back. And that's why we do it this way, because we don't want you to go away and go, what did she say about that? How big did she make that? Because it's all there, which is fabulous. And then we've also got this one, which was the spritz. Now, what does that look like when you translate that into a card? This is it. So these were the 2 Red Robin stamps that we launched. And then this is a stencil. That stencil just spritz through really lightly, cut in half, and half goes on this side and half goes on that side. And that gives you quite an oriental look because of the flowers that you've got on here. And I've just coloured those in with some pencils. So have a play around. All this edging here, it's not a gilding wax, it's the paint. There are so many things that you can do with that paint. It's crazy. Now, tonight at 5 o'clock on the Facebook Live, we will have another code for Cadence. So don't buy it yet. Wait for that code at 5 o'clock on the Facebook Live and then get it because you'll get your discount off. The discounts for this class are CM, so capital C for Charlie, M for Mother, 1-5, Mel. That will give you 15% off your Craft Master products. So the glitters, the fine liners, the tools, the card, all of that kind of stuff. Anything, Craft Master wallets, the folders, anything that we bring you under the Craft Master brand at highlightcrafts.com, that will give you 15% off. On top of that, we've got another code for you, which is stencil, all capital letters, 1515. And that will give you 15% off all Brother accessories, including the SDX machine. Although I do think we've got a good deal coming up on Create and Craft tomorrow, maybe at 4 o'clock. So if you haven't got an SDX 1200 and you fancy upgrading, my word, it's going to be a fabulous deal. So I would like to say a massive thank you for your company this morning going into this afternoon. I've got another class this afternoon. It's 2 hours long on stamping, and then the Facebook Live at 5 o'clock. So get your paints, get your extender and have a play, because I think that blending is fabulous and it works just as well on watercolour card. So one product, all those different applications. And that was just by playing. And that's what we do. We buy a USB, we go away and we play. And out of those 100 stencils, you can probably make thousands and thousands and thousands of different ones. And you're learning something new along the way. And then you take that shape and you make it into a border. And then you make 2 borders and you rotate one and flip it and it slots in and it makes a wider border. And it just keeps going and going and going and going. And the more you play in Canvas Workspace and the more you discover, the better that USB will become. And that's why I love doing the USBs with Scan and Cut, because it just gives you the creative license to make the project that you want to make, rather than there's your stencil, I'll take you $15.99, you go and do what you want to do with it. You're in charge now. You're the creative one behind it. We just give you the shapes, which is lovely. So massive thank you. I hope you can join me tonight at 5 o'clock for our launch of our web exclusives from Two Red Robins. Even if you're not going to buy it, just tune in, because it might give you a different look and feel for Two Red Robins. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one as well. Thank you ever so much. I really appreciate your time. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we will send you that out as soon as we possibly can, and we'll also get it uploaded onto YouTube for you as well. So take care, have a fabulous day, and hopefully I'll see you at 5 o'clock.